I thought betrayal would break me, but it only sharpened my edge. When I discovered his lies, I didn't scream or cry. Instead, I turned his nightly escape into a prison of humiliation. One profile name, one monkey avatar, one blocked account, my digital revenge had only just begun. I never thought something as ordinary as a Netflix profile could become a weapon of revenge. Back then, I was just a girl in love, living with someone I thought I knew inside and out. His name was Daniel. To everyone else, he was charming, funny, dependable. To me, he was my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I was convinced would one day become my husband. Our days were simple. We went to work, came home, cooked dinner, and settled in on the couch to binge whatever series had us hooked that week. Streaming shows had become our thing. Our shared Netflix account was more than just entertainment, it was part of our relationship rhythm. He'd queue up action-packed thrillers, while I preferred dark dramas. Sometimes, we'd compromise with silly sitcoms. It was a small but steady part of what I thought was our solid bond. But things began to shift. I noticed the late-night texts, the way his phone always seemed glued to him, face down on the table, never out of his sight. He used to laugh when I grabbed his phone to change a playlist or check directions, but suddenly, even a glance in its direction made him tense. He claimed work was getting more stressful, that deadlines were piling up, and that he needed privacy to manage it. I wanted to believe him, but small cracks were appearing. One night, while we were watching a show together, his phone buzzed with a notification. He flinched, grabbed it, and turned the screen away from me in one sharp motion. I remember freezing, popcorn halfway to my mouth, as he muttered something about an urgent work email. I wanted to ask questions, but something held me back. I swallowed my doubts and pretended nothing was wrong, but deep down, unease was growing like a weed. The excuses multiplied. Late nights at the office, sudden weekend plans I wasn't included in, and an odd new obsession with his appearance. He started wearing cologne to meet with clients, ironing shirts at midnight, and carrying breath mints everywhere. He still kissed me goodnight, still laughed at my jokes, but the intimacy felt hollow. His words said one thing, his actions whispered another. The breaking point came one evening when I was cleaning up after dinner. His laptop sat open on the counter, a tab still logged into his social media. I never snooped before, but that night, my instinct screamed at me. My hands trembled as I clicked. And there it was, messages with someone else. Not just flirty banter, but explicit promises, pet names, declarations of feelings that should have belonged to me. The timestamps overlapped with nights he claimed to be stuck in meetings. The words cut like knives. I felt my stomach drop, the air leave my lungs. Betrayal, humiliation, fury, all of it flooded me in one crushing wave. The man I trusted, the man I shared my bed, my home, my future with, had been lying to me for months. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw his things out the window. But I didn't. Instead, I quietly closed the laptop, wiped my tears, and forced myself to breathe. My rage wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be calculated. For the next few days, I carried on as if nothing had changed. I cooked, I laughed at his dumb jokes, I played the part of the oblivious girlfriend. But inside, I was boiling. Every touch from him felt fake, every kiss an insult. I knew I had to do something, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. I wanted him to feel the sting in a way he wouldn't forget. Then one night, while scrolling through the apps on our TV, my eyes lingered on the familiar red Netflix icon. That's when it hit me. Our account. The one thing we both used religiously. He was so dependent on it for his nightly comfort, his escapism, his relaxation. What if that became the stage for my revenge? I smiled for the first time in days. The seed of an idea began to grow. Instead of yelling, instead of begging for answers, I'd turn his daily escape into a constant reminder of what he'd done. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be violent. But it would be devastating in its own quiet way. The beauty of it was its subtlety. He'd come home, flop on the couch, grab the remote, and expect to sink into his favorite shows. But instead, every click would stab at his conscience. Every login would whisper the truth he wanted to hide. My plan was forming fast, and the more I thought about it, the more satisfying it became. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't tell him I knew. Instead, I lay in bed beside him, listening to him breathe, pretending to sleep, while my mind raced with possibilities. By the time morning came, I had my answer. My revenge would live inside the very thing he loved most, his Netflix profile. I knew it wouldn't heal the betrayal. Nothing could undo the lies or erase the pain. But this wasn't about healing. It was about balance. It was about taking back a shred of power in a situation where I felt powerless. If he thought he could treat me like a fool, then he was going to learn that I was anything but. The next step was simple. I waited until he left for work, kissed him goodbye with the sweetest smile I could fake, and then grabbed the remote. My hand shook slightly, not with doubt, but with anticipation. The first move in my plan was about to begin, and I knew once I did it, there would be no turning back. I clicked on his profile. That little square he'd personalized, the one that represented him on our account. For years, it was just his space, his portal into entertainment. But now, it was my canvas. I erased his name, the one he'd chosen for his profile years ago, and replaced it with a single word, cheater. The satisfaction that washed over me was immediate. Simple, elegant, devastating. Every time he logged in, every time he saw that word, he'd be reminded. He wouldn't escape it, no matter what show or movie he tried to distract himself with. His own comfort zone had turned against him. I sat back, staring at the screen, a grin spreading across my face. This was just the beginning. When I saw his profile renamed to cheater, I couldn't stop smiling. It was small, almost laughably simple, but the power behind it was delicious. I imagined him clicking into Netflix at work, thinking about his comfort shows waiting for him, only to be smacked in the face by the truth written in bold letters on the screen. I pictured his expression, the twitch of confusion, the tightening jaw, the dawning realization. He might laugh it off at first, but soon it would gnaw at him, exactly the way his betrayal gnawed at me. But I wasn't finished. Renaming the profile was only the spark. I wanted the fire. I wanted layers to this revenge, details that would frustrate him each time he thought he could relax. A word alone was powerful, but words combined with inconvenience. That was pure gold. The next step was toddler mode. I navigated into the settings, heart racing as I switched his profile to kids only. The system asked me to confirm, and with one click, his universe of dark thrillers, gory dramas, and blockbuster action films collapsed into brightly colored cartoons. His recommended list transformed into sing-alongs, talking animals, and educational shows for preschoolers. Instead of crime bosses and superheroes, his new options were a dancing dinosaur and a chipmunk that taught numbers. I couldn't stop laughing. The absurdity of it, the sweetness of it, it was almost poetic. He'd betrayed me like an immature child sneaking around behind my back, so now he'd be treated like one every time he logged in. The irony couldn't have been sharper. Then came the final flourish, the avatar. He'd chosen a sleek, brooding character years ago, something that looked strong and masculine. I deleted it and scrolled until I found the silliest option available, a cartoon monkey with bulging eyes and a goofy grin. Perfect. I saved it, and the screen locked in the image. The serious, polished man he tried to portray would now be represented by a wide-eyed primate designed for toddlers. I sat back and admired my work. It was ridiculous, childish even, but it was devastating in its own way. It was the kind of prank that didn't just disrupt his entertainment but attacked his pride. Every time he saw that word, that monkey face, that lineup of cartoons, he'd be reminded of who he really was. A liar. A cheater. A fool. That night, when he got home, he acted normal. He kissed me on the cheek, asked what was for dinner, and plopped down on the couch while I stirred a pot of pasta. I watched him out of the corner of my eye as he grabbed the remote. He clicked into Netflix, and there it was, cheater. I almost dropped the spoon trying to hide my grin. He froze. I heard the faint click of the remote as he hovered over the profile name. Then he muttered under his breath, too low for me to catch. He selected the profile, and I heard a sharp intake of breath when the kids menu popped up. "What the hell?" he said, louder this time. I turned my head innocently. "What's wrong?" He frowned at the screen. "I think Netflix glitched or something. My profile's been renamed, and it's all kids shows." I forced myself not to laugh. "Weird. Maybe it's just a bug." He clicked around, trying to fix it, but I'd locked the parental controls with a pin he didn't know. His frustration grew by the second. He muttered curses, slammed the remote, then finally sighed in defeat. "I'll just use your profile." I shrugged, pretending not to care, but inside, my heart soared. He could run from the word cheater on his own profile, but he couldn't erase the memory. It had already sunk its claws in. Over the next few days, his frustration escalated. Every time he tried to watch something, the monkey face stared back at him. He texted Netflix support, complained about a profile error, but of course, nothing changed. Meanwhile, I savored the growing tension. He grew more irritable, snapping over small things, pacing at night when he couldn't watch his shows. His dependence on that account was almost pathetic, and watching him suffer through its sabotage felt like justice served. But I still wasn't finished. Blocking him was the ultimate step, the kill shot. I waited a week, letting the irritation build, until I finally logged into the account one morning and removed his access entirely. When he tried to sign in later, all he found was an error message. His profile, his watch history, his comfort zone, gone. That evening, he stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand. "Did you change the Netflix password?" he demanded. I blinked at him, feigning confusion. "No, why?" "I can't log in anymore. It keeps saying the account doesn't exist." "That's strange," I said, turning back to chop vegetables. "Maybe it's just expired. You know how these subscriptions are." He stared at me, suspicious but powerless. He had no proof, no leverage. Just anger simmering beneath the surface. I kept my face calm, my voice steady, while inside I reveled in every second. He sulked for days, trying to set up his own account, but it wasn't the same. He had no saved shows, no history, no recommendations. He had to start from scratch, like a stranger in his own home. Meanwhile, I enjoyed the account in peace, watching whatever I pleased, free of his control. I thought that would be the end of it, but the satisfaction lingered. Every time I logged in, I thought about the monkey face he'd seen, the word cheater blazing at him, the helplessness when he realized he'd been locked out. It was better than any confrontation, better than screaming or crying. It was quiet justice, private and sweet. What surprised me most was how others reacted when I shared the story anonymously online. I typed it out one night, laughing as I recounted the steps, and posted it under a throwaway account. The responses poured in, hundreds of strangers cheering me on, sharing their own tales of digital revenge. One woman had locked her ex out of his Amazon account, canceling every subscription one by one. Another had hijacked a Spotify account, filling it with breakup songs and cringe-worthy playlists titled "I Miss My Ex." Someone else even reset their ex's gaming passwords, leaving them locked out of years of progress. Reading their comments, I felt less alone. I wasn't just some heartbroken girl lashing out, I was part of a silent army of people who'd been hurt and decided to take control in clever, petty ways. Our battlefield wasn't fists or words, it was the digital spaces our exes took for granted. And our victories were sweeter because they struck at pride, not just convenience. My revenge wasn't about destroying him. It wasn't about ruining his life or exposing him to the world. It was about balance, about reclaiming power in a situation where I had none. Each digital roadblock I created was a reminder that actions have consequences. And the best part? He never suspected I knew. To him, it was just bad luck, strange glitches, mysterious lockouts. He thought the universe was against him, when in reality, it was me, sitting quietly beside him, smiling into my cup of tea. And with every passing day, I realized something important. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me finding my strength again, rediscovering that I didn't need to scream to be heard, or break down to prove I was hurt. My silence was powerful. My cleverness was stronger than any confrontation. I had taken his betrayal and turned it into a lesson he couldn't escape. And the best part was, I wasn't done yet. The moment I blocked him from the account, I knew the real fallout was about to begin. Subtle pranks had stung him, but total exile from the one platform he used daily? That was the knife twisted deeper. The first sign came in the form of angry texts. Why the hell can't I log in? Did you mess with the account again? Stop changing passwords. This isn't funny. I need my shows back. Give me the login. I read each message in silence, sipping my coffee, a smile tugging at my lips. He wasn't begging for forgiveness, he wasn't apologizing, he wasn't even acknowledging the betrayal I had discovered. No, his focus was Netflix, the one comfort I had stripped from him. That told me everything I needed to know about where his priorities truly were. When I didn't respond, his tone shifted. More desperate. Please just give me the account. I'll set up my own later, I just need it tonight. You know I can't sleep without watching something. I let the phone buzz on the table while I cooked dinner. Every notification was fuel. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done to me, he was sorry for losing his entertainment. And that was exactly why this revenge mattered. The tension at home grew heavier. He sulked around, snapping at small things, restless without his nightly binge. He tried to pretend nothing was wrong, but his frustration leaked out in muttered curses and slammed doors. I kept my composure, pretending to notice nothing, living my life as if I hadn't just rewritten the rules. The irony was sweet. Here was a man who thought he could juggle lies and deceit, who thought he could betray me and still enjoy the comforts of our shared life. But now, even the simplest comfort was gone. And I was the one holding the key he could never find. I thought that would be enough, but then I saw what happened when I shared the story online. My anonymous post exploded. Strangers loved it. Thousands of upvotes, endless comments of praise. People called me a genius. They laughed at the idea of a grown man locked into toddler mode with a monkey face for an avatar. Some even admitted they wished they'd thought of it first. That validation poured into me like strength. I wasn't just some bitter ex lashing out, I was part of something bigger, a collective of people who refused to let betrayal go unanswered. Comment after comment was filled with stories, an ex locked out of Amazon Prime mid-binge, another humiliated by playlists titled I Miss My Ex, someone else denied access to a gaming library they'd bragged about for years. It was like reading a handbook of digital justice, and my story was now part of that archive. When I scrolled through the responses, one line stuck with me: the best revenge isn't about making them cry. It's about making them remember, every single day, what they lost. That was exactly what I had done. His memory of betrayal would be tied forever to those digital lockouts, those humiliating little reminders. He could never unsee that monkey avatar. He could never forget the word cheater blazing across his profile. Every attempt to log in, every message he sent, every moment of frustration was a scar I had branded into his pride. One evening, he tried again. He slammed his phone down on the counter and glared at me. I don't get it. I've reset the password, I've emailed Netflix, I've done everything, and I still can't get in. Are you sure you didn't change anything? I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Nope. Maybe your email got hacked or something. He rubbed his face, groaning in defeat. Unbelievable. I turned back to my book, hiding my grin. This was better than any confrontation. If I'd screamed at him the night I found out, he would have lied, twisted the truth, maybe even played the victim. But here, in this quiet revenge, there was no arguing, no manipulation. Just a man powerless against an invisible enemy he couldn't name. Days turned into weeks. His frustration dulled into resignation. He signed up for a free trial under his own email, but without the years of history, the recommendations were empty, the comfort gone. It wasn't just about watching shows, it was about losing the world we had built together. I had taken that from him, and he knew it. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch him scrolling on his phone, aimlessly cycling through apps, restless without the account he used to rely on. It was pathetic, and yet satisfying. Every moment of his discomfort was a repayment of the betrayal he thought he'd hidden. The most delicious part was how silent it all remained. He never knew that I knew. He never suspected that every glitch, every lockout, every humiliation had been orchestrated by the very person sleeping beside him. To him, it was just misfortune, bad luck, bad timing. To me, it was control reclaimed. I didn't need to scream, I didn't need to cry in front of him, and I didn't need to demand answers he would never give. My revenge was already written into the code of his digital life, forever linked to his betrayal. And while he flailed in confusion, I found peace in knowing that I had outsmarted him, that I had turned his own habits into a cage he couldn't escape. That's when I realized something else. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It wasn't about making someone miserable forever. It was about balance. About tilting the scales back to where they should have been. He had lied, cheated, and stripped me of trust. In return, I had stripped him of the small comforts he had taken for granted. That was justice enough. But the story didn't end there. Because just when I thought I had moved past it, he tried one final desperate move. His last attempt came quietly, almost pathetic in its simplicity. After weeks of sulking and failed logins, he reached out from an unknown number. The message was short: "Hey, it's me. I know you blocked me, but can we talk? Just about the Netflix account." That was it. Not an apology, not a confession, not even the courage to address what he had done to me. Just a plea for the account. The man who had destroyed our relationship, who had betrayed my trust in the ugliest way, was reduced to begging for a subscription he once took for granted. I didn't reply. The next day, an email arrived from his work address. "Look, I just want the login back. That's all. We can talk about everything else later." Everything else. He said it like the betrayal was just background noise, an inconvenience compared to the inconvenience of losing his comfort shows. My stomach turned, but my resolve only hardened. He wasn't sorry for what he had done. He wasn't even acknowledging it. His world had shrunk down to the absence of Netflix, and that was where I intended to keep him. His persistence was almost laughable. Another voicemail came later that week. His voice was shaky, a mix of irritation and desperation. He rambled about not being able to sleep without something to watch, about how his routines were ruined, about how we didn't have to make this a big deal. Then, in the weakest tone I had ever heard from him, he added, "I know things got messy, but maybe we can fix it. Just send me the login, and we'll go from there." I listened to the entire message in silence, then deleted it. He wanted to fix it, but it was never us, never the betrayal, never the damage he caused. It was his lack of convenience. And I had no intention of giving that convenience back. For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt complete control. The anger, the heartbreak, the questions that had once clawed at me, they quieted. My revenge hadn't just disrupted his habits, it had exposed who he really was. A man who couldn't face the consequences of his own actions, who cared more about entertainment than the person sitting beside him all those nights. I blocked the new number, marked his emails as spam, and muted every possible way he could reach me. I didn't confront him, didn't give him the satisfaction of hearing my voice or seeing my face. My silence was the last word, louder than any argument ever could have been. And then, slowly, I began to move forward. At first, it was small things. Rearranging the apartment, replacing the photos, deleting his playlists from my phone. Each act of removal felt like clearing space in my life for something better. Friends I had neglected came back into my world. Nights once spent waiting for him to return from late meetings were now spent laughing over drinks, rediscovering myself outside of his shadow. I realized how much of myself I had given away in that relationship, how many times I had ignored red flags, how many excuses I had swallowed to keep the peace. The Netflix revenge wasn't just about punishing him, it was about reminding me that I wasn't powerless. That I could take back what was mine, piece by piece, starting with something as small as a digital profile. I won't lie, there were nights I replayed it all in my mind. The messages I found, the lies he told, the way I sat across from him at dinner pretending not to know. But instead of breaking me, those memories began to fuel me. I hadn't begged for closure. I hadn't demanded explanations. I had created my own ending, and it was far more satisfying than anything he could have offered. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I checked the throwaway post I had written about the revenge. It had exploded even more. Thousands of people had shared it, laughing, applauding, adding their own experiences. Some called it childish. Others called it brilliant. But almost everyone agreed, it was deserved. Reading their words felt like validation, not because I needed approval, but because I realized I wasn't alone. Betrayal was universal. So was the need for balance. That night, as I logged into my account, the single remaining profile greeted me. No more monkey avatar. No more childish settings. Just me. My shows, my preferences, my space. For the first time in years, it felt entirely mine. I leaned back, smiled, and whispered to myself, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, clever, and unforgettable. Because long after he stopped trying to reach me, long after he set up his own blank account, long after I erased his presence from my life, I knew one truth would follow him forever. Every time he saw a login screen, every time he thought of Netflix, every time he remembered those nights of humiliation, he'd remember me. And he'd remember exactly what he lost. If betrayal lit a fire in you, let this story remind you, revenge doesn't always need fists or fury. Sometimes silence and creativity cut the deepest. For more tales of justice served cold, subscribe now and join our revenge community. Your next story of payback starts here.